Part 1. The Girl at the Gate. He wasn't expecting anyone that morning. It was still early, barely past 6 a.m., and the cabin sat quiet in the fog like always did, tucked away deep in the Oregon woods. The place hadn't seen an unfamiliar soul in years. Not since the funeral. Michael had just poured his coffee and taken his usual seat on the porch. The wooden swing creaked slightly under his weight. Same flannel shirt. Same black boots. Same silence. He liked it that way. Simple, undisturbed, and private. That's how he kept everything, especially his grief. But today something shifted. Through the trees, down the gravel path, came a figure, a small one. At first, he thought it might be a deer or one of the neighbor's dogs. But then he saw her, a little girl, maybe 9 or 10, thin, pale, dragging a faded pink suitcase behind her and clutching something in her arms. Michael narrowed his eyes. She stopped right in front of the gate. He didn't move, didn't speak, just watched her through the steam rising from his mug. She looked too clean to be lost, but too tired to be playing a prank. Her hair was tangled, her shoes worn out, and her face was strangely familiar. Not like a face he'd seen before, but like one pulled out from a long-lost photograph. She didn't say anything at first, just stood there, blinking slowly. Then came the words that would unravel everything he thought he knew about his past. "Are you Michael Alden?" He nodded, slowly. Then, "I think I'm your daughter." Silence, the kind that makes birds stop singing. Michael stood, slowly, his coffee forgotten, his pulse loud in his ears. "Excuse me," he said, voice hoarse. The girl looked down and reached into her coat pocket, pulling out a folded piece of paper. "My mom told me to give you this, if anything ever happened." She stepped closer and held it out to him. Michael took the letter with trembling hands. His name was written on the front, in handwriting he hadn't seen in nearly a decade. It was hers. It was Claire's. He felt like the ground beneath him shifted. Claire, the only woman he'd ever truly loved. The one who walked away without warning. The one who vanished with nothing more than a note and a divorce settlement. He stared at the envelope, frozen. "She passed away," the girl said softly. "Last month." Michael looked up. The girl didn't cry. She just looked tired, like someone too young to be holding that kind of weight. He finally opened the gate. "Come in," he said, barely above a whisper. Inside the cabin, the girl sat at the kitchen table, her legs dangling off the chair. She hadn't touched the cocoa he made. She just sat there, arms wrapped around her backpack. Michael sat across from her, letter still unopened. "What's your name?" he asked. "Lila," she replied. "Lila Claire." Of course. Claire would have given her that name. "How old are you?" 9. "I turn 10 next week." He nodded. That timeline, it tracked. Claire had left him almost exactly 10 years ago. Said she needed space, but never explained why. She had vanished. No phone calls. No emails. Just disappeared. Now here was this girl, with Claire's eyes and Claire's mouth, sitting in his kitchen. He finally opened the envelope. It was a letter, 2 pages, handwritten, and from the first line, he knew it was real. "Michael, if you're reading this, it means I'm gone. I'm sorry you had to find out this way. I never meant to keep her from you forever. I was scared. Scared of what you'd say, of how you'd feel, of how everything had already fallen apart between us. But Lila is yours. She always was. I just didn't know how to tell you, without breaking everything even more." Michael's hands tightened on the page. "She's strong like you. Stubborn, too. And she's going to need someone now. Someone steady. Someone who knew me before I got sick. Before the walls went up." He looked across the table at Lila. She was watching him. Later that afternoon, he showed her to the guest room. Claire's old quilt still lay on the bed. Lila said nothing, just ran her fingers over the fabric as if it called to her. "You can stay as long as you need," Michael told her. She nodded, but before he closed the door, she said something that stopped him cold. She said you were the kindest man she ever knew. That's why she chose you, even if he didn't choose us. Michael didn't reply. He closed the door gently, then leaned against the hallway wall and let the weight of her words sink in. He thought he'd buried that chapter of his life, thought the past couldn't reach him all the way out here, but somehow it had, in the form of a little girl named Lila Claire, who had just called him Dad. That night, the house didn't feel the same. Michael stood in the hallway, staring at the closed door of the guest room. Behind it, Lila slept. Hopefully, she hadn't said much after dinner, just nodded, thanked him quietly, and disappeared into a room that used to belong to no one. He hadn't touched her suitcase. He didn't even ask what was inside. It didn't feel right. The letter still sat in his hands. He hadn't been able to finish it earlier, not with Lila watching him like that. Her eyes, so steady, so tired, as if she'd already lived through more than she should have. Now, in the silence of the cabin, he sat down at the kitchen table and unfolded the rest of the pages. "I know this isn't fair to you, and it isn't fair to her either, but life doesn't always give us fair. It just gives us choices. And at the time, I chose wrong. I chose silence. I didn't tell you about the pregnancy. I convinced myself it was better that way. You were already grieving your father, trying to keep your business alive, and I didn't want to be a burden. But Lila deserves more. She deserves someone who remembers who I used to be before the fear took over. Someone who will tell her about the nights we danced in the kitchen, about your laugh when you used to burn pancakes every Sunday. She deserves someone steady. She deserves you. If she's with you now, please be patient with her. And with yourself. She's a lot like me, but she's not broken. Not yet. Don't let her become like I did. She doesn't need perfect. Just real." Michael swallowed hard. The words blurred a little. His fingers tightened on the page, not out of anger, but grief. That old, familiar grief that had never quite left him. It had just sunk deeper, hiding under routines and silence, and a lie that some people just weren't meant to be fathers. Now here he was, and there she was, a daughter, his, and he had no idea what the hell he was supposed to do next. The next morning came gray and slow. Oregon in the fall always felt like the world had dimmed the lights. He made coffee, toast, scrambled eggs he didn't even want to eat. Then footsteps, tiny ones. Hesitant, Lila appeared in the doorway, wearing an oversized sweatshirt, his clearly, and looking half asleep. "You hungry?" he asked, without turning around. "Kinda." He placed a plate in front of her. She stared at it like it was a quiz she hadn't studied for. "You like eggs?" "Mom made them different," she said. "Yeah, she always added cheese." "I forgot." She blinked. "You remember that?" He smiled faintly. "I remember a lot." She picked up her fork. It was the first normal moment they'd had. After breakfast, Michael took her for a walk down the gravel path that curved behind the cabin. The woods were quiet, leaves crisp beneath their feet. "Did you always live here?" she asked. "Since before you were born. Your mom and I bought this place together. We were going to fix it up and make it our forever thing. What happened?" He stopped walking, looked at the trees. "We broke before the house did." Lila didn't reply. She just looked around, then reached down and picked up a smooth, flat stone. "I like it here," she said quietly. Michael didn't know what to say to that. It surprised him. He expected her to hate it. The silence, the distance, the lack of Wi-Fi. "It's calm," she added. "Mom hated the city, even though we lived there. She told me that once. She said you were calm too, except when you yelled at the news." He laughed. "First time in days. Maybe longer. I still do that." Back at the cabin, Lila spent the afternoon reading quietly by the window. Michael tried to work, old habits from his woodworking shop, but his hands couldn't stay steady, not with her presence shifting the air like that. Everything reminded him of Claire. Her photo still sat on the shelf, the last one they'd taken before the split. Her hair was longer then, and her smile more tired. But the way she leaned into him, that part still felt real. He didn't realize Lila had walked up behind him until she spoke. "Is that her?" He turned, startled. "Yeah, that's your mom." Lila stared at the photo for a long time. "She never talked about you." "Not really. Just said you were far away." "I guess I was." "Did you love her?" Michael looked at the girl, his daughter, and felt 1,000 answers rise in his throat. "Every day, even when I didn't say it." She nodded, and that was it. No tears, no drama. Just two people standing in front of a memory neither of them had fully understood. That night, he made grilled cheese sandwiches. She said they were decent. He considered that a win. When she went to bed, she left the door cracked open. A small gesture, an invitation. Michael sat on the porch long after the lights inside went out. Stars above, silence around. He thought of Claire's letter again, of the words she hadn't written, of the years he'd lost. And he wondered, not for the first time, what it meant to become a father when your chance had almost passed you by. The days started to stretch in new ways. Michael hadn't expected her to stay more than a night, maybe two. He figured someone, a distant aunt, a social worker, a friend from the city, would come calling and take her back. That this was just temporary, a mistake, an interruption in a life he'd purposely built to be uninterrupted. But no one came, and Lila didn't seem in a rush to leave. She was quiet, polite, and strange in a way that made Michael feel like he was living with someone older than her age. She didn't complain about the lack of internet. She didn't ask for toys or snacks. She just existed, like a piece of the past come to life. One morning, he found her in the attic. The door was usually kept shut, mostly because it was where Claire had kept her things before she left. He'd never had the heart to go through them. But there Lila was, sitting cross-legged on the wooden floor, a box open in front of her, papers scattered like fallen leaves. Michael froze in the doorway. "What are you doing up here?" Lila looked up. "I wanted to see if there was anything of hers." I miss her smell." His chest tightened. She held up a scarf. Faded yellow, patterned with tiny suns. Claire used the word around her messy hair while painting. "You can keep it," he said, stepping closer. "You sure?" "I was never going to throw out anyway." They sat together in silence for a moment, the smell of dust and old cedar in the air. Lila picked up an envelope, thicker than the others, tied with twine. "What's this?" she asked. Michael leaned over. The handwriting on the front stopped him cold. It wasn't Claire's. It was his mother's. That's from your grandma," he whispered. "Your mom?" He nodded. "She wrote me letters when I moved out here. Every month. Even when I didn't answer. She used to say, 'Just because you're quiet doesn't mean I'll stop knocking.'" "Did you ever read them?" He shook his head. "I didn't have the courage." "Can I read one?" He hesitated, then nodded. Back in the living room, Lila curled up on the couch, letter in hand. Michael made tea he didn't plan to drink. He watched her read. Her eyes moved slowly, her expression unreadable. Then, without looking up, she said, "She sounds like someone who loved you a lot." He cleared his throat. "She did. I didn't make it easy. I think Mom didn't either." Michael let out a soft, bitter laugh. "No, she didn't." "Do you hate her?" The question landed like a stone in his chest. "No," he said finally, "but I hated how she left. She said in the journal that she didn't want to be a storm in your calm life." "What journal?" Lila got up, walked to her suitcase, and pulled out a worn leather-bound book. She handed it to him gently. This was hers. She wrote in it all the time. Poems, feelings, stuff she didn't tell anyone. Michael took it like it was glass, The cover was cracked and the edges worn, but her name was inside, written in soft ink, Claire Alden, 2014. Have you read it? He asked. Some of it. She told me to read the last page after she was gone. Did you? Not yet. That night, after Lila went to bed, Michael opened the journal. He didn't read from the beginning. He turned straight to the back. The last page. Claire's handwriting had gotten shakier, thinner, but it still held the loops and curves he remembered. If you're reading this, it means you found your way back to each other. Or maybe fate finally caught up. Either way, I'm glad. Lila is going to need more than love. She's going to need answers. The kind I never had the courage to give. There's someone you need to talk to. Someone who knows what I was too afraid to tell you. His name is Jonah Reese. Michael's heart stopped. Jonah Reese. He hadn't heard that name in 12 years. Jonah had been Claire's friend. Or, at least that's what she called him. A painter. Soft voice. Soft eyes. Too soft. Michael had always hated him. They'd met at a gallery show back, when Claire was still working as a part-time curator. Jonah was kind. Too kind. The kind of man who said things like, I see colors and emotions, and meant it. Michael never liked artists. They felt untethered. And Jonah was the most untethered of all. The last time he'd seen him, Claire had left the show early, and Jonah had lingered just a little too long near her car. Michael hadn't seen or spoken to him since. Why would Claire mention him now? The next day, Michael didn't tell Lila about the journal. Not yet. Instead, they went to the local farmer's market. It was the first time they left the cabin together. Lila's eyes lit up at the handmade jams, the fresh bread, the lady selling tiny wind chimes made from spoons. Michael caught people staring, some old neighbors he hadn't seen in years. He could read it on their faces. Who's the girl? He didn't care. Lila held his hand like it was the most normal thing in the world. And for a moment, it almost was. That evening, after they came home and ate dinner on the porch, Lila asked, Who's Jonah? Michael dropped his fork. Where'd you hear that name? It was in her journal. He took a breath. He was someone your mom used to know. Someone you didn't like? You could say that. She waited, expecting more. He didn't give it. You think I should talk to him? He asked. If she wanted you to, maybe it matters. Michael looked out at the trees, the dark sky bleeding into the horizon. He hadn't planned on seeing Jonah Reese ever again, but maybe it was time to dig into the past. Because something about Claire's letter and the journal and Lila's arrival, it all felt tied to something he never fully understood. And if he wanted to be more than just a man playing house with a stranger who shared his blood, he needed to know the truth. Michael hadn't driven into town in months. Maybe more. He hated the way things had changed. The old diner had become a boutique coffee shop. The bookstore had closed. Even the gas station now had neon signs and auto pay. But the worst part wasn't the town. It was the memories clinging to every streetlight, every bench, every damn crosswalk. Places he and Claire had once laughed, argued, kissed. Now he was back, with a purpose he didn't fully understand, chasing a name he'd tried to forget. Jonah Reese. According to Claire's journal, Jonah still lived in town. Not just in town, just a few blocks away from the gallery where they first met. She had written it like a casual note, but Michael knew Claire better than that. If she put it in the last page of her journal, it meant something. Something big. He parked in front of a small art studio tucked between a laundromat and a tea shop. The sign read Reese and Light, Art and Restoration, in brushed brass letters. The windows were clean. Inside, paintings hung on the walls like quiet whispers, moody landscapes, quiet faces, soft hands reaching towards something unseen. Michael stood outside for a minute. This wasn't just a visit. It was a confrontation. Even if he didn't fully know what he was confronting yet. The bell chimed softly as he stepped in. Jonah looked almost the same. A little older. More gray in the beard. but still wearing the same type of loose shirt and rolled-up sleeves, like he'd just come from some abstract war with a paintbrush. When he saw Michael, his body froze for a second, like memory caught up before his voice did. "Michael?" Michael gave a slow nod. "Been a long time." Jonah stepped from behind the counter, wiping his hands on a cloth. Yeah, it has." For a second, there was only the sound of wind outside and a hum of old jazz playing faintly from a speaker in the corner. Then, "She told me you might come," Jonah said quietly. Michael narrowed his eyes. "Claire, she wrote me a couple months before she passed. Told me if anything ever happened, I should talk to you." Michael exhaled through his nose. "So this was all planned?" Jonah held up a hand. "Not planned, prepared. There's a difference." They sat down across from each other, Michael stiff, Jonah calm as ever. The past swirled around them like smoke. "What exactly did Claire tell you?" Michael asked. "Bits and pieces. About Lila. About the truth." Michael stiffened. "You mean the truth she didn't tell me until after she died?" Jonah nodded, but didn't flinch. "She was scared. She didn't want you to hate her. She didn't give me the chance not to." Silence. Jonah stood, walked to a drawer, and pulled out a small wooden box. Inside were letters. Claire's handwriting again. "She sent me these. All addressed to you. Never mailed." Michael didn't reach for them. He didn't know if he could handle reading the words of a woman who broke him. Now, through the hands of the man she may have loved more than him. Jonah saw it. "For what it's worth," he said, "I never slept with her." Michael looked up sharply. "She loved you," he said. "She loved you, too. Not enough to stay." Jonah paused. "No, but enough to regret leaving." Back at the cabin, Lila was sitting on the porch when Michael returned. She was sketching, something he hadn't seen her do before. A tree, with long-reaching roots and tiny flowers blooming at the base. "You okay?" she asked, not looking up. Michael sat beside her. Saw an old ghost today. Was he scary? No, just quieter than I remembered. She nodded. "I think Mom was scared to tell you everything, because she didn't want you to hate her. She didn't give me that choice. She gave you me." That landed harder than anything Jonah had said. Michael didn't reply. Instead, he reached out slowly and took her drawing. "This is beautiful," he said. "You think so? You've got her hands." She said, "I had her heart, but your eyes." Michael looked at her, really looked at her, and for the first time, he didn't just see Claire's daughter. He saw his. That night, he sat by the fireplace, the box of letters unopened in front of him. Lila had gone to bed. The house was quiet again. But something had changed. The silence no longer felt empty. It felt full of what could be, of what still mattered. He opened the first letter. "Michael, I wrote this after Lila's second birthday. You would have loved her curls. She laughs like you, the sort of full-body laugh that takes over the room. I wanted to tell you so many times. But every time I reached your phone, guilt kept pulling my hand away. Tears came slow, not heavy, but real." He read the second, then the third. Some were short. Some were full of drawings she'd made of their old home, their life, her regrets. They were windows into a woman he never fully understood, and a reminder that maybe, just maybe, some good things weren't lost forever. The letters changed something in him, not in a loud, cinematic kind of way, but slowly, like how frost melts off pine needles in the morning sun. Quiet, steady, almost invisible unless you're paying attention. Each letter from Claire peeled back a layer of the wall Michael had built around his heart. Guilt mixed with memory. Anger melted into something softer. He started waking up before the alarm. He cooked breakfast without burning it. He even bought Lila her favorite cereal after she mentioned it just once. Fruit Loops, the kind with too much dye and not enough nutrition. Claire would have rolled her eyes. But Lila smiled, and that smile made the whole cabin feel different. Lila started leaving little things around the house. Her drawing pencils on the counter, her boots by the door, her hairbrush on the bathroom sink. Michael didn't move them. He liked seeing the evidence that she existed here, that she belonged. One afternoon, he found a note taped to the fridge. "You make better eggs than Mom. Don't tell her I said that." Grinning face with sweat. "Lila," he left a reply underneath. "Secret's safe with me. M. Not Dad. Not yet, but maybe someday." They developed rhythms. Fridays became pizza nights. Saturdays were for hikes. Sundays, she helped him in the workshop. Well, helped was generous. She mostly watched and asked too many questions. Why do you always handle it first? Why are there so many types of nails? Do you miss her every day or just on some days? That last one caught him off guard. He didn't answer right away. Just kept sanding the edge of a chair he'd been restoring for months. "Every day," he finally said. "But some days, I miss her less than I love you." Lila blinked, like she didn't know what to do with that. Then she smiled. Small, but real. "I miss her less when I'm here." That night, they watched an old movie Claire had loved, The Iron Giant. Lila cried at the end. Michael almost did too, but he held it in, not because he didn't feel it, but because sometimes the strongest thing a father can do is just be still when everything hurts. The next morning, the silence of the cabin was interrupted by something unfamiliar, a knock at the door. Michael opened it to find a woman in her 30s, wearing a beige coat and holding a clipboard. "Mr. Alden?" she asked. "Yeah." "My name's Rachel Torres. I'm from the county office of child welfare." Every part of him tensed. "We received a notice that a minor is residing here without formal guardianship." Michael glanced back toward the hallway, where Lila was brushing her teeth, humming some made-up tune. "Who filed it?" "I'm not at liberty to say." "She's my daughter." Rachel nodded slowly. "I understand, but you're not listed on any legal documentation as her guardian. And Claire, she didn't appoint a will or a custody plan." He swallowed. "What does that mean?" "It means we'll need to do a home visit, review living conditions, possibly arrange temporary placement until things are clarified." "She's not going anywhere," he said, firmer now. Rachel's voice was calm but practiced. "Mr. Alden, I'm not here to take her away. I'm here to make sure she's safe. That's all." Michael clenched his fists. He had already lost Claire. He wasn't going to lose Lila too. When Rachel left, Lila came out. "Who was that?" "Just someone from town." She looked serious. He sat down, motioned for her to sit beside him. "We might have to prove a few things. About us." "Like what?" "Like that we're better together than apart." She nodded slowly. "Do I have to go somewhere?" "Not if I can help it." Lila stared at the floor, then said, softly, "I want to stay." Michael didn't say anything. He just pulled her into a hug. It was the first time she didn't flinch. That evening, he called his lawyer for the first time in years, told him everything. The letters, the journal, the birth certificate, the lack of a will. "We'll need to file for legal guardianship," the lawyer said. "Might be a process. I'll do whatever it takes." "You sure about this, Michael? Fatherhood isn't just emotional. It's legal, financial, life-consuming." Michael looked out at the workshop, where Lila's half-painted wooden box sat on the table. "I'm not just sure. I'm late, but I'm here now." The following week was a blur. Home visit, paperwork, calls with people who didn't know Claire, didn't know Lila, didn't know him. Michael kept it together, because Lila needed him to. At night, he read her one of the letters Claire had written. Not always the whole thing. Some were too raw. But bits, sentences, lines that carried weight. "She dreams with her eyes open, Michael, like I used to, before the world made me close them. She bites her nails when she's scared. Please teach her not to be ashamed to fear. Tell her that I never stopped loving her, even when I felt too broken to show it. Lila listened. Sometimes she cried. Sometimes she asked questions. But most nights, she just fell asleep with her head against his arm. Michael had lived alone for almost a decade. He'd grown used to quiet. But now, with Lila there, the silence didn't echo anymore. It hummed, like a song he hadn't heard in years, but somehow still knew all the words to. And for the first time in a long time, Michael didn't feel like a man surviving. He felt like a father learning how to begin. A week passed, then another. Michael filed for legal guardianship, got a court date, hired a family law attorney who said all the right things but couldn't promise anything. The judge will want to see more than biology, she said. He'll want proof you're the right person for her. Michael said what he felt. I'm not the right person because of DNA. I'm the right person because I showed up when no one else did. But courts didn't run on emotions. They ran on paperwork. Lila sensed the tension. She didn't ask about the court stuff, but Michael could see it in her eyes. She was afraid, not of him, but of the idea that someone else might decide what happened to her. One evening, after dinner, she asked a question that had been hovering for days. What if the judge says no? Michael set down his fork. Then we fight harder. What if we lose? He looked at her. Steady. Then we keep fighting, no matter what. You promise? I promise. Rachel Torres, the child welfare agent, came for a second visit. This time, she stayed longer, asked more questions, checked Lila's schoolwork, health records, sleeping arrangements. Then she asked Lila privately if she felt safe, if she felt wanted. Lila nodded, then said something that caught Rachel by surprise. He makes me feel like I'm supposed to be here. Rachel wrote that down. Later, she told Michael, she trusts you. That matters more than you think. But trust wasn't the only thing on trial. The lawyer had warned him, if there's anyone who could claim custody, any blood relative, they could complicate this. Michael didn't think there was anyone. Claire had been estranged from her family for years. Her father had passed. Her mother lived in Florida and never reached out, even after the funeral. But life has a way of digging up roots you thought were buried. It came in the form of a letter. A man named Anthony Hale, claiming to be Claire's half-brother. He wanted custody. She should be raised by blood. The letter read, "You were just a mistake Claire didn't correct." Michael's hands shook as he read it. He'd never even heard the name. His lawyer confirmed. Anthony had filed an emergency motion in family court. He wanted to be declared Lila's legal guardian. He had no children, no wife, just a condo in Arizona, and a clean background check. He's never met her, Michael said. How can he just come out of nowhere and try to take her? Because technically, the lawyer explained, he's next of kin. Michael didn't tell Lila. Not yet, but she could feel it in the way he clenched his jaw, the way he stayed up late, staring at court forms, the way he hugged her just a little longer before bed. One night, while reading a bedtime story, she said softly, "Is someone trying to take me away?" Michael froze. "Where did you hear that?" "I heard you on the phone. You said, 'He has no right.'" Silence. Then he sat on the edge of her bed. "There's a man. Says he's your uncle. Is he nice?" "I don't know, but he doesn't know you. So why does he want me?" "Because some people think blood is all that matters." "What do you think?" Michael took a deep breath. "I think showing up matters more. Loving someone every day. Being there for the messy stuff." "So you still want me?" "More than anything in the world." Lila looked at him for a long time, then whispered, "Okay, then we win." A few days later, a package arrived. No return address. Inside was an old photograph. Claire, smiling, sitting on a picnic blanket with Jonah and someone else. Michael turned the photo over. Claire's handwriting. "Me, Jonah, and Anthony, summer '06. He stared. So he was real, and he had been around, which meant Claire had lied again. She hadn't just cut ties with her family. She'd hidden them. Michael couldn't tell if it was shame, trauma, or pride, but it hit him hard. What else didn't he know? And did any of it matter now? Jonah returned his call that evening. You said you never slept with Claire, Michael said bluntly. I didn't. You said she told you everything. She told me enough. Did she ever talk about Anthony? There was a long pause. Once. Why didn't you say anything? Because it wasn't my place. Well, it's my place now, and he's trying to take her. Jonah sighed. Claire didn't trust him. Said he was all about control. Their mom married late. Had Anthony from another relationship. He didn't grow up with Claire. Barely knew her. But when she got sick, he started reaching out. Not to help, just to insert himself. Michael paced. If you got anything, texts, letters, where she says that, I need it. I'll look. Michael paused. Thanks. I didn't do much right back then, Jonah said, but if I can help now, I will. That night, Michael couldn't sleep. He sat outside with a mug of tea, listening to the wind in the trees. The stars above were faint but steady. He thought of Claire, of what she carried alone, of what she tried to fix too late, and of Lila, who slept inside with a stuffed bear she named Captain Pancake, curled under a blanket Michael had bought her last week. He never thought this would be his life, but now that it was, he'd do anything to keep it. The courtroom was smaller than Michael imagined. No marble pillars, no echoing voices, just wood-paneled walls, a few worn chairs, and a judge with tired eyes and a pile of cases on his desk. But to Michael, this room was everything. It was where his fate and Lila's would be decided. Lila sat quietly in the back with Rachel Torres, sketching something in her notebook. She wanted to be there, in case they needed to know the truth, she said. But Michael didn't want her on the witness stand. She'd already lived through enough. Anthony Hale sat 2 rows up, dressed like a man trying too hard. Navy suit, shine shoes, and a look of polite detachment. He didn't look at Michael, barely glanced at Lila, just sat there, as if the outcome didn't really matter to him. But Michael knew better. Some people don't fight because they care. They fight because they want to win. The judge, Honorable Peter Langston, adjusted his glasses and addressed the courtroom. Today's hearing concerns the guardianship of minor Lila Claire Alden, age 8. The petitioner is Mr. Michael Alden, and the counter-petitioner is Mr. Anthony Hale, alleged maternal uncle of the minor. The formal words didn't match the emotional weight. This wasn't just paperwork. This was parenthood on trial. Michael's lawyer started with the basics. Michael had been Lila's primary caregiver since Claire's death. Lila had expressed a desire to remain in his care. Claire never assigned a guardian, but her journal and letters clearly referenced Michael as the intended father figure. Michael had stable housing, financial means, and a history of emotional commitment, even without legal recognition. Then they presented letters from Claire and a signed statement from Jonah Reese, confirming Claire's distrust of Anthony. The judge listened, took notes, didn't give anything away. Then came Anthony's side. His lawyer, sharp and precise, painted a different picture. While Mr. Alden may have been romantically involved with Claire Alden, he is not legally the child's father. There is no adoption record, no legal connection. Michael clenched his fists. Mr. Hale, however, the lawyer continued, is a biological relative, a stable, successful individual with no history of neglect or abuse. He is willing and prepared to provide a safe environment for the child. Anthony sat with his hands folded, face neutral. He looked like a man giving a PowerPoint, not fighting for a little girl's life. Then the judge turned to Michael. Mr. Alden, I'd like to hear directly from you. Michael stood, straightened his jacket, looked the judge in the eye. Your Honor, I don't have the right papers. I don't have a fancy job title. And until 2 months ago, I didn't even know I had a daughter. He paused. But since the day Lila walked into my life, I haven't stopped choosing her. Not once. She's not my obligation. She's my miracle. He reached into his coat and took out one of Claire's letters. Claire left me this. In it, she wrote, I didn't give you the title of father, but you earned it anyway. That's who I am. Not because of law, but because of love. The judge nodded slowly, scribbled something in his notes, then said, I'd like to speak to the child. Privately. Lila sat across from the judge in chambers, her feet swinging nervously. He offered her juice. She declined. Lila, do you know why you're here today? To see if I get to stay with Michael. And how do you feel about that? She looked him straight in the eye. I feel like he's my home. The judge smiled gently. What do you like most about him? He listens. He doesn't pretend to know everything, but he always tries. And do you feel safe with him? I feel like myself. The judge nodded. Anything else you want to tell me? Lila pulled a folded drawing from her pocket, handed it over. This is him. And me. On our porch. That's the stars. He says we're made of the same stuff. The judge returned to the courtroom, expression unreadable. Everyone stood. He looked at both parties, took a long breath. This case has complexities, legal and emotional, but after reviewing all materials, listening to both parties and speaking with the child, the court rules in favor of Michael Alden as the legal guardian of Lila Claire Alden. Michael didn't breathe, not for a second. Then Rachel smiled. His lawyer grinned. And Lila ran straight into his arms. Told you we'd win, she whispered. He held her tight. We didn't win, he said softly. We found our way home. That night, back at the cabin, they had pancakes for dinner. Lila drew stars on every napkin. Michael framed one. The caption she wrote beneath it said, The day I got to stay. And that's when he knew he hadn't just gained a daughter. He'd finally become a father. Michael thought everything would feel different after the judge's decision. Maybe some big shift, some dramatic realization. Maybe the air would feel clearer. Maybe the silence would finally be peaceful. But what he felt was quieter than that. Not loud, not cinematic, just settled, like the dust had finally landed. Lila was different too, not in the way she laughed or talked, but in how she moved through the house. More barefoot, more humming to herself, more leaving crayon drawings on the fridge without asking first. She was claiming space, and Michael loved it. They spent the first Saturday after the ruling painting her room. Or, more accurately, Michael painted while Lila changed her mind about the color 5 times. They started with lavender, switched to seafoam, ended up with something called morning sky that looked like the inside of a daydream. Michael accidentally got a big stripe of blue across his forehead. Lila laughed so hard she nearly fell off the stepladder. You're a mess, she giggled. I'm your mess now. You've always been my mess. That hit him deeper than she knew. School started a week later. Lila was nervous, not about the classes or the kids, but about being the girl whose mom died and the guy who's kind of her dad. Michael took the morning off work and made her pancakes shaped like stars. He messed up the first 3, but the 4th was decent. They sat on the porch, watching the school bus roll by, both knowing they'd have to join the rhythm of the world again. You think they'll like me? She asked. If they don't, they're missing out. Do you think I'm weird? I think you're the good kind of weird. She smiled, and for a second, looked so much like Claire it almost knocked the wind out of him. Later that day, while she was at school, Michael cleaned out Claire's last box. He hadn't opened it since the funeral. Inside were things he expected. Photo albums, some jewelry, old birthday cards. But at the bottom, there was a video cassette, labeled in Claire's handwriting. For you too. His hands trembled as he slid it into the old VHS player Jonah had given him. The screen flickered. Static. Then Claire, smiling, sitting cross-legged on their old porch, holding a mug that read, World's Okayest Mom. If you're watching this, then I'm probably not around anymore, she began, voice calm but eyes a little watery. I don't want to leave like this. I wanted to say everything in person, but I chickened out. So here I am, in my ugly porch sweater, saying things I should have said years ago. Michael leaned forward. Lila's name came up next. Baby girl, I love you more than life, more than the sky and the sea and all the books in every library. And if you're watching this with Michael, that means I made the right choice. She looked straight into the camera. He's the best man I've ever known, even when I didn't know how to love him the right way. I ran because I was scared, but I came back because I knew you deserved him. Michael, I was wrong to keep her from you. I thought I was protecting her, but I was protecting myself. She's your daughter, not because of DNA, but because you'll never stop showing up. The tape ended. The screen went black. Michael sat in silence, then rewound it, watched it again. That night, he showed it to Lila. She didn't say much, but afterward, she crawled into his lap, rested her head against his chest, and whispered, "She picked you." Michael nodded, kissing the top of her head. "And I pick you, every day." Fall arrived quickly in the mountains. Leaves turned copper and gold. Michael taught Lila how to build a fire in the fireplace. She burned her marshmallow the first try, then insisted burnt marshmallows tasted better anyway. She called him Dad for the first time on a random Tuesday, while asking for the Wi-Fi password. "Dad, do you know the password?" He nearly dropped his coffee. "Say that again?" "The Wi-Fi password." "No, the first part." She grinned. "You heard me." He tried to play it cool. Failed. Ended up smiling like a fool for the rest of the day. At night, they played cards or read books or just sat on the porch watching the stars. One evening, Lila asked, "Do you think Mom's somewhere up there?" "I don't know, but I like to think she's listening. What would you say to her?" Michael looked up at the sky, then whispered, "Thank you for sending her back to me." They weren't perfect. Michael forgot to sign a permission slip. Lila spilled nail polish on the couch. They argued about bedtime, about screen time, about whether cereal counted as a real dinner. Lila said yes. Michael eventually agreed. But they were real, and that was more than Michael had ever hoped for. The letter came on a rainy Tuesday. Michael almost tossed it, thinking it was just another insurance form or ad, but the return address caught his eye. Boone County School District, Office of Outreach and Education. Inside was a short note. "Mr. Alden, we've reviewed your volunteer work and student mentorship logs from the past 12 months. Your contributions have not gone unnoticed. We'd like to offer you a full-time position as Director of Community Education Programs. This role would require relocation to Denver, Colorado. Denver, 7 hours away. Different state, different life." He sat with the letter all day, not telling Lila. She came home soaking wet from the rain, laughing, her backpack dripping onto the hardwood floor. "It's not even cold," she grinned, "just damp." Michael smiled but said nothing. That night, after she went to bed, he read the letter again. Denver meant a real salary, health benefits, a proper future. But it also meant pulling Lila out of school, away from the cabin, away from the place where she finally felt safe. Jonah called that night, out of the blue. "Still alive up there?" "Yeah, barely." "You?" "Barely. What's on your mind?" Michael told him about the offer. Jonah let out a low whistle. "That's big." "It's something. But it's not here." Jonah paused. "You remember when we were kids? You said you'd never live in a city again." "Yeah, I remember." "What's changed?" "She did." Silence. "So what are you going to do?" "I don't know." The next day, Michael took Lila to the lake. They skipped rocks, talked about nothing and everything. After a while, she said, "You're quiet." "Thinking. About me? Always." She leaned back on the dock, feet dangling above the water. "If something's bothering you, you can tell me." Michael exhaled. "There's a job in another state. They want me to go. She didn't respond right away. Then, would I come with you? Of course. Will we still be us? Yes. Would it still smell like pine trees and burnt toast? Probably not. She smiled softly. Then I'm not sure yet. That night, Michael couldn't sleep. He sat on the porch with a notebook, listing pros and cons. He wrote, better pay, health insurance, stability, career growth. Then under cons, far from Jonah, far from Claire's grave, no lake, no porch stars, not home. The next day, Lila left him a note on the fridge. Let's visit Denver, see if it feels right. Michael stared at it for a long time. She didn't say no. She didn't say yes. She just offered what Claire never had, a choice. They made the trip the next weekend. Denver was loud, bright, buzzing with energy. Lila loved the bookstore, the zoo, the street musicians playing violins under murals. But by the second day, Michael noticed the quiet creeping back in, the unsure shuffle of Lila's feet, her silent stares out the car window. On the last night, they ate ice cream by a giant sculpture shaped like a blue bear. It's cool, she said, but I miss the stars. You think we could make it here? He asked. She took a long pause. I think we could survive here, but we were already living back home. On the drive back, neither of them talked much until they passed the county line, and Lila whispered, Welcome home, Dad. He smiled. Yeah, home. He turned down the job the next morning. No regrets. He didn't need a title or a bigger paycheck. He had a kid who trusted him, a town that finally saw him, and a life that, for the first time, felt full. A few weeks later, the school offered him a local role instead, smaller scope, but meaningful. He said yes. Lila joined the drama club. She played a sunflower in the school play. Michael cried, not because she was amazing, though she was, but because when she took her bow, she looked straight at him and mouthed, Thanks for staying. Fall turned to winter with barely a whisper. Snow arrived early in the season, and the first morning they woke to a world washed in white. Lila ran outside barefoot, spinning in her pajamas. This is magic, she shouted. Michael sipped his coffee from the porch, smiling like a man who had somehow been handed a second life. But even in that joy, he saw it, a shadow behind her eyes. Something quiet, something curious. It started subtly. She asked if he still had photos of her mom. He said yes. They spent an afternoon flipping through albums Claire had left behind. Pages filled with laughter, youth, and old Polaroids of sunlit Sundays. She looks happy, Lila whispered. She was, Michael said, but the next question came a few nights later. Was she sad when she had me? Michael blinked. What? No. Why would you think that? She left. Michael's heart cracked. He kneeled beside her bed. Lila, your mom didn't choose to leave. She got sick. But she didn't tell you about me for years. Silence. Michael swallowed hard. That part, I don't fully understand either. In the days that followed, the questions came more often. What was she like before she had me? Did she ever tell you about her parents? Was she scared of being a mom? Do I remind you of her? Michael answered as best he could. But the truth was, there were holes in Claire's story, spaces between facts, gaps in time. Michael had accepted them, learned to live with not knowing, but Lila couldn't. She was her mother's daughter, curious, relentless, brave. One night, she pulled out the old journal Claire had left behind. Michael had never read it all the way through. Something about it felt sacred, like trespassing. But Lila cracked it open without hesitation. It's mine, too, she said gently. She was my mom. They read together, page after page, fragments of thoughts, unfinished sentences, scribbled poetry, grocery lists next to dreams, hope next to regret, and then a line that made them both pause. Some days, I look at her and wonder if I deserve her. Some nights, I look at myself and know I don't. Michael closed the book slowly. Lila's voice was small. She didn't feel good enough? No, but that wasn't her fault. That was something inside her. Was she broken? Michael shook his head. She was human. The next day, they drove out to the cemetery. It was the first time Michael had taken Lila to Claire's grave. They brought her mom's favorite flowers, sunflowers. Lila stood silently for a long time, then knelt and placed a drawing at the base of the headstone. It was a picture of the three of them. Michael, Lila, Claire. She's always going to be part of us, Lila said. Yeah, Michael replied, voice tight. She is. That night, back home, Lila crawled into his lap and asked, can we still talk about her sometimes? Not just when we're sad. Michael smiled, brushing her hair behind her ear. We can talk about her whenever you want. Happy, silly, awkward, even mad. Did she ever snort when she laughed? Only every time she drank soda. Did she ever forget to pack my lunch? Twice. But one time, she brought you a cheeseburger and fries to preschool and said you were too classy for PB&J. Lila giggled. She was kind of dramatic. You have no idea. They laughed long into the night, and for the first time in a long time, the memories didn't feel like they were buried. They felt alive, shared, given permission to breathe again. Later, when Michael was tucking her in, Lila asked, do you ever wish you were still here instead of me? Michael's chest caved. He leaned down, kissed her forehead, and whispered, Lila, you are not a replacement for anything. You are a miracle all by yourself. Even if I ask hard questions, especially if you ask hard questions, even if I make you sad sometimes, especially then. She wrapped her arms around his neck. You make me feel like I'm allowed to take up space. His voice cracked. Because you are. That night, after she fell asleep, Michael stood at the window watching the snowfall. The world was quiet, but inside, he felt something settle again. Not grief, not confusion, but peace. There were still things he didn't know, still pages of Claire's story he'd never get to read. But now, he wasn't carrying that weight alone. He had someone asking the questions with him. And somehow, that made the not knowing okay. It came on a Wednesday. No fanfare. No knock at the door. Just a plain manila envelope slipped through the mail slot, buried between coupons and a flyer for a local car wash. Michael almost missed it. The return address wasn't familiar. D. Whitaker. Chicago, Illinois. No first name. No company logo. Just clean block letters and a quiet kind of urgency. He opened it on the kitchen counter while Lila was at school, half distracted, expecting nothing. Inside was a single letter, handwritten, neat, crisp, to Michael Alden. If this has reached you, it means Claire's instructions were carried out. I'm sorry to send this without warning, but she wanted you to have it when she was gone and when the time was right. Michael's breath caught. He sank into the nearest chair. My name is Daniel Whitaker. Claire and I were friends. More than that, once. Before she met you. Before she had Lila. We lost touch after college, but we found each other again during the last year of her life. I was one of the few people who knew how sick she really was. She gave me this letter. Told me not to send it unless she didn't come back from treatment. Told me it was for you and maybe one day for Lila. Michael read on, his fingers trembling. Inside Daniel's words was another envelope, tucked carefully between the pages. It was addressed in Claire's handwriting. To Lila, for when you're ready. Michael stared at it for a long time. He didn't open it. It wasn't his. It belonged to Lila. That evening, over grilled cheese sandwiches, he told her, not everything, not yet, but enough. A letter came today, he said gently, from someone who knew your mom. Her eyes widened. Who? A man. Someone from her past. Like an old boyfriend? Michael nodded slowly. I think so. They were friends again before she passed. Did she love him? Michael took a deep breath. I don't know. Maybe in a different way. But she loved you most. He reached into his jacket and pulled out the envelope. She wrote this. For you. Lila held it in both hands like it was made of glass. Can I read it alone? Of course. She disappeared into her room. The door closed with a soft click. Michael waited. 15 minutes. 30. An hour. He made tea, poured 2 mugs, left one on the counter, just in case. Then the door opened. Lila stood there, her cheeks wet, holding the letter to her chest. She was scared. She said quietly, I know, but she loved me so much. I know that too. Lila walked forward and leaned into him, not collapsed, not broken, just resting. She said you'd understand me, even when I don't make sense. Michael smiled into her hair. She was right. She said I'd be stubborn like you. I already knew that. And she said you'd never walk away. Michael pulled back to look her in the eyes. Not in a million years. Later that night, she sat at the kitchen table, the letter open beside her, rereading a line over and over again. I wanted to be everything you needed, but I know I won't get to be. So I gave you the next best thing, someone who loves you as much as I do. Lila looked up. She gave me you. Michael nodded, his voice barely a whisper. And you gave me her again. The next morning, Lila asked if she could write back. To who? To Daniel. I want to thank him for keeping her safe. Michael hesitated, then smiled. Okay, want me to help? No, she said. I think I know what to say. She wrote it with a purple pen, folded it neatly, and sealed it with a sticker shaped like a star. Dear Daniel, thank you for loving my mom. Thank you for helping her be brave. She picked good people. I'm glad you're one of them. Lila Claire. Life didn't change in a big way after that. There were still lunches to pack, snow to shovel, and dishes to do. But something had changed. The questions weren't so sharp anymore. The past didn't feel so heavy. And the present felt whole. One night, weeks later, Michael found Lila on the porch, looking at the stars. Do you think she knew we'd be okay? Michael sat beside her. I think she hoped. Really, really hard. Well, she was right. Michael looked at her. Strong, gentle, brave. Yeah, he said. She was. Spring didn't rush in. It tiptoed quietly, melting the snowdrifts, painting the tips of trees in soft green, waking birds that hadn't sung in months. The porch smelled like wormwood again. The lake shimmered in early morning sun. And for once, Michael's life didn't feel like something he was surviving. It felt like something he was building. Lila was 10 now, not much taller, but somehow older. She talked with her hands more, asked sharper questions, danced while brushing her teeth. She was writing a play for school about stars who couldn't find their constellation until they met the right moon. Michael couldn't understand half of it, but he was the moon, apparently, and that was good enough for him. One morning, over cereal, Lila asked, Do you ever think you'll fall in love again? Michael nearly spit out his coffee. That's a random question. You're not that old. Thanks. I'm just saying. Mom would want you to be happy. Michael looked at her, truly looked. She wasn't asking because she was scared he'd replace Claire. She was asking because she wanted him to keep going. He exhaled slowly. Maybe, someday, when it's right. She nodded, satisfied. Just make sure she likes pancakes. That spring, Michael built a treehouse. Badly. It leaned to the left, the ladder creaked, and the floor wasn't quite level, but Lila loved it. It's perfect, she said, crawling inside. It's crooked. So am I. Fair point. They painted the outside yellow. Hung a string of fairy lights that blinked like fireflies at night. Michael didn't care that his hands ached for a week. He hadn't built it for utility. He built it for magic. One Saturday afternoon, they hosted a backyard consolation party for her class. Michael grilled hot dogs. Lila handed out star maps and glow-in-the-dark stickers. Rachel Torres came too, now more friend than social worker. She's thriving, she told Michael. But you know that. Sometimes I still think I'll wake up and she'll be gone. She won't. You sound sure, because she knows you'll never leave. That night, after everyone had gone, Michael and Lila lay on the grass in sleeping bags. No tent, no noise, just stars and breath. Did you ever imagine this? Lila asked, What? Me. Us. All of it. Michael smiled into the dark. Not even close. Me neither, but I'm glad it found us anyway. A few weeks later, Michael got a call. A university in town wanted him to guest lecture for their early education program. Share a story. Maybe even mentor young teachers. He hesitated. Imposter syndrome crept in. But Lila said, You're literally the best teacher I know. I turned out great. You sure did. So go tell them how. He did. And they asked him to come back. On the anniversary of Claire's passing, they didn't visit the cemetery. Not because they forgot, but because they didn't need to go to her to feel her presence. Instead, they cooked her favorite meal, chili and cornbread, and danced barefoot in the living room to her favorite album. Michael sang off-key. Lila wore a crown made of dandelions. You think she'd be proud of us? She asked. I think she already was. That summer, they took their first trip outside the state. Just the two of them. No destination. No GPS. Just a paper map and playlists they made together. They stopped at roadside diners. Collected postcards. Camped near rivers. Wrote their own bedtime stories in the dark. On the last night, they sat by a campfire, toasting marshmallows. Lila looked across the flames. You know what I think? Tell me. There's a lot of ways to be a family. Michael nodded, and a lot of ways to find one. I'm glad I found mine when I did. Me too, kid. Even if I came out of nowhere. Michael laughed. You didn't come out of nowhere. You came from the stars. He didn't know what the next year would hold, or the one after that, but he knew this. Some stories don't start the way we expect. Some families are made, not born. And sometimes the greatest thing you'll ever be is chosen. Shooting star. The end.